The twin cities were conflated in the public mind in those glory days, and referred to as Bulfari, but in actual fact they had always been quite separate and distinct entities, not even belonging to the same country. Thus, when Gathkar began its ill-advised road down into its current condition of shame and degradation, Bul had to watch helpless as its twin, Fari, a once fabulous city deserving of respect, was slowly but pitifully reduced because of political incompetence and misrule. This did not happen all at once, yet the slide was always and ever downwards. In the centuries that followed the founding of the Republic of Gathkar by its Gelton forefathers, the Negro tribesmen of the many Bantu peoples, all of related ethnic tribes but with many different languages and allegiances, were brought into Gathkar as a source of cheap labor. Over time they settled and became an integral part of the Gathkar population. During this time there was a second mass immigration into Gathkar from the northeast, with large numbers of mixed-race Telitzim travelling down to form colonies within all the Gathkar cities of any significant size. There were even substantial but transient communities of Chevnik Murghal gypsies that routinely wandered in from the nomadic trails of the east. Since those days, the Gathkar Bantu Telitzim integration of cultures had amalgamated into a muddled and confusing social concoction that had undermined the integrity of the country to the point where the earlier sense of united Gathkari nationhood had entirely fallen away. Then it was, amidst a multiracial fabrication of diverse and contradictory loyalties, that a revolutionary ideology had intervened to seize ascendancy amongst the ethnic Gathkaris, a religious faith based upon a sense of imperialist guilt for their Gelton ancestors' appropriation of this territory in the past, and of the masculine vices that were to blame for it. This emergent doctrine had established itself as a new ruling class, a theocracy that worshipped the lunar goddess Artemis, the many-breasted, in the religion of Mawanamaku, or Supreme Woman, in which the clergy were all female. The masculine vices of violence, militarism, and xenophobic imperialism were cast aside. In their place, the ideals of feminine sympathy and nurturance were exalted. With this revolution, the former Republic of Gathkar was transformed into the Gathkar Queendoms. Inside the labyrinthine temples, where the intrusive tread of a male foot was unknown, the priestess cult of Mawanamaku venerated the deified female in adoration and reverence. They performed their prayers and rites wholly naked, the better to reveal their femaleness before their celestial sister in heaven. Their adulations following the natural order of the lunar cycle, as written in the very structure of the cosmos, and in the holy blood of their own sacred menstrual biology, a natural order from which the male was excluded. For this reason, the queendoms were not, strictly speaking, queendoms at all, since their rulers were high priestesses, not queens. But the name of queendoms had been coined by the good folk of Bourbon, the most powerful and influential country in the region, because it was the only word within the Gelton language that could in any way describe the extraordinary state of affairs of having a ruling caste exclusively of women presiding over a country in which the very concept of maleness was held in contempt. The name, at least outside of Gathkar itself, had stuck. There were 33 high priestesses of the faith scattered across Gathkar, each of whom led a coven of 333 sister priestesses. In addition to these, there were many thousands of lay sisters amongst the general population. Males were disqualified by their own biology from holding any kind of office or rank within the formal hierarchy of the theocracy of Mawanamaku, other than as the very humblest and lowliest of lay acolytes, their inferior status ordained by Artemis the many-breasted, in accordance with Mother Nature. The gendered bifurcation of the sexes that resulted with its unquestioned belief in the superiority of the female in her intuitive emotionality and empathic sensitivity, had come to pervade every aspect of Gathkari life. The inherent nurturance of the female was held to make her infinitely more suited to the grave responsibilities of the role of moral and political leadership, divinely gifting women with an ascendancy that preempted any need for masculine systems, such as an evidence-based legal process. Any man accused of a crime by any woman was automatically guilty without trial, for it was axiomatic that no woman would ever tell a lie, and that maleness was, in all instances, the surest sign of guilt. In daily life, the most unfortunate aspects of maleness were kept in check by a few simple but necessary laws. No man was permitted to speak in the presence of a woman, except by her explicit dispensation. No man had any claim upon his own children. No man had any right to defend himself, and so on. The men of Gathkar had somehow convinced themselves of the rightness and justice of these gender relations, and they sought to win favour with their betters by feminizing themselves, whilst at the same time making continual public confession of their own bestial male vices and personal inadequacy. During Ealdred's first visit to the queendoms, he had seen many appalling examples of this feminization, of men whose masculinity had been so degraded that nothing would induce them to exhibit any of the forbidden behaviour, of being aggressive, combative, sexually predatory, or, most sinful of all, patriotic. Ealdred had been a younger man in those days, and had been unable to restrain himself from expressing his disgust by boxing the ears of these abject compliant wretches who were so consumed by self-loathing. It was for this reason that he had tried to prepare Ige for the full horror of it, lest she unsheathe her cherished falcon-headed dagger and slaughter half the male population of the country in her revulsion and repugnance at their effeminacy. The rise to absolute dominance of Mwanamaku had given unprecedented totalitarian powers to the despotic matriarchs who were its priestesses. Not only had they divided their citizens by gender, they had further splintered the population with their perversely self-directed ethnic prejudice, propagandized from the pulpits of the priestesses, by which the present generation descended from the original Gathkaris had come to believe that their historical imperialism made them morally inferior as a community to those whose heritage was identified with foreign cultures. This attitude toward ethnicity and race had ruptured their society into a disunity that must eventually prove fatal. Its effects were already apparent. The multiracial character of Gathkari society had bestowed upon some of its citizenry a light brown skin colouring known locally with a great deal of pride as mulatto mawalad. This, in addition to being physically attractive, might have been a beneficial social development, had it been allowed to serve as a unifying and levelling influence. But disastrously for the oppressed population, it had merely produced a deeper prejudice against those Gathkaris who retained the white skins of their Galtan ancestors, and so added to the burdens suffered by the descendants of the founding fathers. As a result of all this, whilst Gathkar was nominally a federation of theocratic city-states under an authoritarian matriarchy, the reality was that their self-destructive political dogma and their military weakness had made them catastrophically vulnerable to conquest by their nearest neighbours. In particular, the Akrani had made significant incursions into Gathkar, colonizing whole quarters of their cities. Like a swarm of locusts they had come from as far south as Bayesik, the inland sea in the southern portion of Akran Minor. They did not colonize militarily, for it transpired that there was no need to, the borders being open. They merely arrived and imposed themselves upon a docile populace that had been taught to live on its knees in a permanent state of apology.